You the only one there, Yosy? Oh, you're muted. First time I've seen a guy stop himself from talking in public. Starting from the two dots.
Okay. Still don't hear you. Don't hear you.
He's talking. He thinks he's at home and he's talking to himself. He's muted, right? You see this microphone?
No, he unmuted himself and we still can't hear him.
Now's the time to answer the clock specials.
I'll send him a note.
Testing.
There we go. Okay, now we hear you.
Okay. Now we're in business. I'm not sure why you changed my default microphone unless someone was using the computer last night. Okay, so if you can hear me now, we can get started. Geweldig. Okay, and in the meantime, look, David, people came too. So all our problems got solved in one fell swoop. Okay, so yesterday we learned the sugya of Chayv and Misa Shagagin. And the Gemara seemed to have brought a raya that both Rav Shlokish and Rav Yechon agree that if someone did an Aveira that normally brings within a Chiyuv Misa, even if there's not an active Chiyuv Misa, and in this instance, for instance, there was no Asra, nevertheless, any Chiyuv Mammon that was triggered at that time will be Potter. Everybody agrees to that, and we learn it because of the Hekesh. We learn it because of the Hekesh. Why is my camera not working? We learned it because of the Hekesh of Make Behema Yishalmena and Make Odom Yumos. And the Hekesh is just like anytime you damage somebody, you have to pay no matter what the conditions were under where you did damage, whether it was showing you made it on his rotten, so too, anytime there's a Chiyuv Misa involved, no matter where it showed you made it on his rotten, you would be potter from paying. And the whole question was, do we extend that principle to Chayv Malchus as well? So that's what we were yesterday, and now we are up to the new Gemara, which is a relatively easy Gemara. I just have to see why I cannot get my camera to focus. Let me unplug it and plug it in again. See what happens. We're having electronic issues today. Let me try this one more time. Oh, okay, now it's working. Okay, I guess just need a little reset. Zog to Gemara, Tonu Rabbanim. So we're 6 lines from the bottom on Daf Lamed Hey on the base. Tonu Rabbanim. Arayos ushnios la'arayos. When we read these words, automatically we think arayos, which are chivek krisos, and shnios la'arayos are derabbanons. That's what we would think. The Gemara is going to end up saying that that's not pshat, but we'll just read it the way it is now. Arayos ushnios la'arayos ein lahen loy knas v'loy pitui. They don't get knas, nor do they get pitui. So they don't get the 50 shkolim. Hamima enes, a woman who's a mima enes. So we know that normally a ktana. Oh, thank you so much. Normally we know that a ktana who's a yesoma, she could be married off with her rabbanan by her mother or by her siblings, by her brothers, but it's not really a kedushin, and therefore, up until the point where she's a naira, she could say, I'm out of here. So ein la knas, ein la loy knas v'loy pita. She doesn't get knas or pita either. So what's the situation? When was she violated? So let's look at Rashi. Rashi says, I'm ma'anis bibaila, So she was a Tana, and she told her husband, I'm out of here. To go and you say Tana, Shasia Ima, Umia Nababaila. So that ain't laknas, she'ena becheskos pesula. We know that she was in a marriage. So if she's in a marriage, we don't look at her like she's a pesula. Therefore, if she was violated after she walked out of her marriage, she's not going to be entitled to knas. That's what Rashi means, which is a little bit difficult to understand because it's like any other woman who was married. She's considered to be a beula. What is the chiddush of this point in the brisa? So Tosfos actually has another pshat that's very, very interesting. And this is what Tosfos says. Tosfos says, "V'nir l'ri the hachi perushai ein la loy knas v'loy pitu." It means in onsa baila. If when she was originally married to her husband, at that point she was a besula. Her husband violated her. In other words, she forced himself on her when she didn't want. So during the marriage, what's she supposed to do? After she's mamayin, can she go back now and say, since retroactively we were never married, now I want to demand knas out of you. So the near the achipusha ain't like knas for like pitoi and unsabaila like pita oisa kishahoisa tachtov koidemian. Afal gab de cheshamiana. Once she made the miun, igloy milsa shaloi hoisa ishtoi. Because once she makes the miun, it undoes her marriage. So now he violated her, and she was not married to him. So does she have a claim of knas? On that, the Brisa says she does not. Okay, idleness. A woman who's an idleness cannot have children. Ain law. She does not either have loy knas v'loy pitui. She also does not have knas or pitui. Let's see if Rashi says anything. Idleness she'ain law simoni nairis lo'ilam. She will never be in the phase of nairis, because we know that she's a tana until she shows simoni idleness and she's at a certain age, and then she automatically transitions to a full gedola. But she's never in that intermediate period of nairis, and knas only applies to a naira. In the knas of Rashi, l'vishain knas elo l'naira. She's never going to show simoni nairis. Kol chav shana yibecheskes kana. Until she's 20, we look at her like she's a kana, where there's no din knas. And then she's a full gedola, once again, who does not have knas. And in the last case, the Brisa suggests that no knas is hayotzes mishum shemra. What does hayotzes mishum shemra mean? It means the husband finds that she's not a besula and that she was mizana tachtov. So Dr. Rashi, at this point in the Gemara thinks shalei motzala baila besulim. And when the Gemara gets up to this case to analyze it, the Gemara's question is going to be baskilahi. Why would she get knas? If anything, she needs to get killed because she was in tachas baila. Okay, so now we're going to go through the case, and that's really what today's about. Is going through this brisa step by step. So islands ain't like knas v'loy pitu, v'yotzes mishum shamra ain't like knas v'loy pitu. My arayis, my shnius l'arayis. So the very first line in the Mishnah, in this brisa, was arayis and shnius l'arayis do not get knas. Ilema arayis mamish. If arayis means arayis mamish, like chayve krisos, like all of the women listed in our Mishnah, such as a choisai and basa choisai and ishes achav. If you can say arayis, it means arayis mamish. And shniyos means midivrei shofin, women who are asherim only midrabanan. Frek the Gemara. I understand why the women that are asherim that are arayis, the conclusion is in toifus. I understand that we have a Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana who holds that we say kamalei b'derabba b'nei over there, and therefore there would be no chiyuv knas. But midivrei shofim, even the midaraisa chazilei, since midaraisa is allowed to marry this woman, and there's only an issue derabbanan prohibiting him from marrying this woman. Why should it not be eligible for a knas? So at this point in the Gemara, we need to stop, because the Gemara says very clearly that a woman who's also midrabanan would surely get knas. Not too long ago, we learned about an sin. I believe it was in the Mishnah. And Rashi learned what is in the sin. Where is the Gemara? Let's see if we can find it. It wasn't too long ago. We learned about if in the sin gets knas. Rashi right over here on the Amud Aleph over here, the beginning of the pair, it said over here Nisina. Nisina is one of the women who's Elunar Sheishon Knas Habal members of Nisina Valakusis. So what's a Nisina? Nisina mina Gavonim. She's from the Gavonim. V'yasur lakal. She's also to marry the Kal. The David gozer aleim, because David was gozer upon them that they should be also lakal. So it says Elunar Sheishon Knas Habal members of Nisina Valakusis. They all get knas, even though they're usher. Even though they're usher. So let me see something. So it says here they get knas, but Rashi says that they're usher midrabanan. So how did that work out over here? Let me just see. Mamzeres gets knas, Nisina gets knas, and Kusa gets. So the question is, it's mashma that minagavoinim v'yasur l'kal. If it's only usher midrabanan, so the question is, Rashi, our Gemara is saying that if it's usher midrabanan, she does not get knas. And here it's saying that you do knas, but our Gemara actually comes out that you should get knas just because it's Rabbanan. So I might be mistaken. Okay, so it's not a problem that it's Rabbanan. So let's go back to where we're holding. So the Gemara says, why don't they have knas? So therefore the Gemara is assuming that so there is a difficulty because the Gemara is assuming that if it's mutter midaraisa, they should get knas, right? And that's what the Mishnah says there as well. So I'm a little bit confused at what I was trying to bring up. So what?
Explain why the Brisa rules and contradictions of the Mishnah 29a.
Right.
Actual rise are not interpreted defined by saying that the Brisa is offered by Timmy,
Right.
who was cited before on 29b, who excludes the rise when it's defined because it's not applying in the case. The verse says, "She shall be from away." Why does the Brisa include secondary rise defined when they're?
Well, that's the Gemara's kasha right over here. But if it's Rabbanan, you do get knas. So it is consistent for everything. Okay. So Zak the Gemara weiter. Given the Marash Chazalei, Amai ein line knas, Ella Arayis means Chai v'Mises Bezin. When it says Arayis don't get knas, it means Chai v'Mises Bezin, like Bitoi and other relations that have a Chai v'Mises Bezin. And Shmiyos mean Chai v'Krisos. Aval Chai v'Lavan yesh lan knas, and Chai v'Lavan will get knas. Umani, who's the man who holds that Chai v'Lavan get knas? Umani Shimon HaTimni. It's going according to Shimon HaTimni, who says that only if ein kedushin toisen, such as a Chai v'Mises Bezin, such as Chai v'Krisos, only then is there no knas. But Chai v'Lavan, which kedushin is toifis, there will be a knas. Ikadami, Arayis are Chai v'Mises Bezin, v'Chai v'Krisos, and Shnius means Chai v'Lavan, which means even Chai v'Lavan will not get a knas. And Mani Reb Shimon ben Menashe said that it has to be that Yochal L'Kaima, and a woman who's a Chai v'Lavan, even though kedushin is toifis, but you're not supposed to keep her. And we learned that Reb Shimon ben Menashe holds over there would not be a din of knas. Okay, without it. Zok Gemara Hamima Enes Ein Law Like Knas V'Lek Pita. A woman who is Mamayit, so she was a Tana, and she walked away from her marriage, she doesn't get Knas, nor does she get Pita. Zok Gemara, normally by default, Hamima Enes has to be a Tana, right? Because once she becomes an adult and she continues on in her marriage, then her marriage becomes a derisive marriage. So every Mamayit has to be a Tana. And it says, Meferish, that it's only the Mamahanes who doesn't get Knas. Hakatana Ba'alma Isla. that would indicate that a regular Tana who is not a Mima'enes would get a Knas. Because otherwise, why would it say Mima'enes ain't Knas? It would say every Tana ain't Knas. But here it says Mima'enes ain't Knas. So we had a mechloikus about that right at the beginning of the pair. So this Bryson must be following the Shita of the Rabbanon, Mani Rabbanon he, the Amri Kitana Yesh Knas. It must be following the Shita of the Rabbanon who holds that a Ketana does get a Knas, and therefore the Bryson says a Mima'enes doesn't get a Knas, but every other Ketana would get a Knas. That's inconsistent with the first Mishnah, because the first Mishnah says Elu Nairis Yesh Lam Knas. Our Mishnah says only a Naira gets a Knas, not a Ketana. This Brisa will disagree with our Mishnah and hold even a Ketana will get Knas, but if she's a Mima'enes, then she does not get a Knas. Amos Sefer. Let's look at the next case of the Brisa. Islandness ain't lochna, ain't law leknas for pitui. The island doesn't get a knas. So let's think about it. That has to be also Reb Meir. That has to be going according to Reb Meir. Why? Because let's think about it. An islandless will never be a naira. An islandless will either be a kana or a gedola. So why do I need to speak out that an islandless doesn't get a knas? Of course, she doesn't get a knas. She'll never be a kana. So it must be that that's going according to Reb Meir. I'm sorry. Yes, it does. But the question is does it mean that could be according to the sheet also includes a Ketana. So islands ain't like that's what people do. Why? Because an islands will never be a naira. So also the Reb Meir, the Ketana ain't laknas. Right? The only reason why an islands would not get a knas is because she could never become a naira. So that means that the first line of the Mishnah that says Mima'enes ain't laknas holds that a Ketana would get a knas. The second line of the Brisa that says an islandless does not get a knas must hold that a Ketana doesn't get a knas. Why? Because the Mikatnusa Yotzalabager. An islandless goes straight from Katnus to full adulthood. She doesn't go through an intermediary stage of Nairus. So are you saying that the pshat of this Brisa is Reisha Rabbanon? The Reisha that's talking about the Mima'enes holds that a normal Ketana would get knas. The Sefer of Meir and the Sefer that says an islandless does not get knas holds like Reb Meir that a Ketana doesn't get a knas. The Chitema, and if you want to argue that no, Kula Reb Meir, let's say that the whole Brisa holds that a Ketana does not get a knas. The whole Brisa holds that a Ketana does not get a knas. So the question would be, if a Ketana does not get a knas, why did the Brisa have to speak out that a Mima'enes doesn't get a knas? Of course, a Mima'enes doesn't get a knas because she's a Ketana. So Zok to Gemara, Mima'enes Savilak Rav Yehuda. Oh, I think Bensi is joining us here from Emeritus Roll. Yeah, welcome, Bensi. Mima'enes Savilak Rav Yehuda. So it must be. Everybody holds like Reb Meir. But then the ratio becomes difficult to understand. What does it mean that a Ma'enes does not get a knas? No Ketana gets a knas. The teretz is we're going to change our common assumption. Our common assumption is that once a girl becomes a naira, she can no longer make miyun. Now we're going to introduce the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that just because she's a gedola, it doesn't mean she cannot make miyun. Rabbi Yehuda holds that she could make miyun. So therefore, we need to know that a Mima'enes doesn't get a knas. What type of Mima'enes are we talking about? A Mima'enes who's more than 12. A Mima'enes who's still a naira. Since Rabbi Yehuda holds she could still be Mima'en, then that's the Chiddush. A Ketana for sure does not get knas. And the Mima'enes who's above 12, she doesn't either get knas. But if she was not a Mima'enes and she was a regular naira, then of course she would get knas. Zok to Gemara, Umi Savar Law, can you possibly say that Reb Meir agrees with Rabbi Yehuda? Can you possibly say that the Reb Meir who holds that a Ketana doesn't get a knas holds like Rabbi Yehuda that a girl could make miyun even though she's after 12? I'm going to show you Reb Meir doesn't hold that. So Tanya, ad nosai habas memanis, up until what age can a girl be memayin? Ad chetavi shtei sayers to Reb Meir. Reb Meir says until she brings 2 sayers, which means until she becomes a naira, which means Reb Meir holds that once she's past a naira, she cannot do mean anymore. So if she cannot do mean anymore, then how could you say that Mima'enes in our Brisa is referring to a girl who has already brought Beis Cyrus. It's impossible because according to Reb Meir, she cannot do mean anymore. Rabbi Yehuda holds Achi Yarba Shachar Alalovan until she has more hair there. Exactly how much, I'm not sure, but she has to have a lot more hair, which means even though she's older than an Ira, she's still allowed to do miyun until she reaches a higher level, a more progressed level of maturity. But Reb Meir clearly doesn't hold like that. So you can't explain our brisa that Reb Meir, it's going according to Reb Meir, who holds a katana doesn't get knas, but she holds that miyun is possible when she's an Ira, because clearly Reb Meir holds miyun is not possible when she's an Ira. Ella, so let's flip it around. Ella, Rabbi Yehudi. Let's say it's following the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that miyun can continue past when she's an Ira. And by the halacha of whether or not a katana gets knas, he'll hold like Reb Meir, which means a katana doesn't get knas. So basically, instead of saying Reb Meir subscribes to Reb Yehuda, which you can say, because clearly Reb Meir does not, maybe Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that miyun can continue on even when she's an Ira, will agree to Reb Meir shita, where he hasn't expressed any opinion about Lagabi when knas begins, and he can hold like Reb Meir that a katana does not get knas, only an Ira. Zok to Gemara, you can't say that either. When we suffer law, can Rabbi Yehuda possibly hold that a katana does not get knas? I'm going to show you Rabbi Yehuda holds a katana does get knas. The Rabbi Yehuda Amarav Zu Divrei Reb Meir. Later on in Daf Mem, the Gemara quotes Rabbi Yehuda Amarav saying that these are the words of Reb Meir, and it's referring to the halacha that a katana doesn't get a knas. V'misa, if Rabbi Yehuda also agrees that a katana doesn't get a knas, what the Gemara should have said is Zu Divrei Reb Meir V'Rav Yehuda Miboyle. So clearly Rabbi Yehuda holds that a katana would get a knas. So because of that, we don't have a tana that would be consistent with both the halacha in our Mishnah that a mima enes doesn't get knas, ha katana does get knas, and also will be able to hold that the idleness doesn't get knas. That is our stira. Zok to Gemara, instead of saying it's Reb Meir and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda in one shaila, or saying it's like going like Rabbi Yehuda and he holds like Reb Meir in one shaila, which we said cannot be, it'll be a third anonymous tana. Hi tana, there's a new anonymous tana. Savar like Reb Meir bechada, upaлагale bechada. We'll get a new anonymous tana whose name we don't know, and let's say he holds by miyun, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that miyun can occur even after she becomes a gedayla, and he holds like Rabbi Meir that holds a katana cannot do miyun. I'm sorry, katana does not get knas. So that was the first shot. So I guess ideally the Gemara doesn't want to say that. The Gemara would rather have an identifiable tana who we can say is the author of a Mishnah. To say it's some unknown tana and mix and match who he holds like in different machlokes, that's I guess less desirable. Rav Mamar, Rav says your whole kasha does not begin at all. Because my enes haruya limoyim. So let's go back to the beginning of our sugya when the Gemara asked the kasha. It said hamima enes ein laknas v'loy pitui. So we made a deal. If a mama enes doesn't get a knas and a mama enes is only a katana, it must be that a regular katana would get knas, and it's only because she is a mama enes that she doesn't get a knas. So that was the deal the Gemara made. Hamama enes ein lo knas v'lo pitu hakatana b'alma isla. So the Gemara slugs this up at its source. It doesn't say you cannot make such a deal that all katanos get a knas except for the mama enes, because when it says mama enes, it means to include all katanos, because mama enes doesn't literally mean a girl who actually made miyun. It means a girl who's in the age that she could do miyun. Any girl that's in that age group that she could make miyun. In other words, any girl that's a katana, ain't no like knas v'lo pitui. So don't be medayik from here that a normal katana could do miyun. A normal katana does get knas. Don't be medayik from here that dafka mama enes doesn't get knas, but a regular katana does get knas. No, because when the brisa says mama enes ein knas, it means any girl who's of the age that she would be able to do miyun will not get knas, meaning all katanas. So Omar, Rav from Omar, my mama enes are really mine. In fact, why say it that way? Well, listen to katana. If you want to say katana. Don't use the word mima enes to describe a katana. Say a katana. So kasha, no. You have a kasha, but it's not a pirch and ganzen. So mima'enes could be a code word referring to all ketanos because we're assuming that a ketana cannot do miyun, and all ketanos would not have knas or pitu. Beautiful. Idleness ein law loy knas v'loy pitu. Now we're going to analyze the next line of the brisa. An idleness does not get knas. Or a mini effect gemara. Hachareshes, a woman who is deaf. Vashoita, the idleness. These three women. Yesh lahem knas. They do get knas. And v'yesh lahem tainis besulam. If the husband marries them and finds out that they're not a basula, so then he could say Pesach Basuch Motzas. Frank the Gemara. What type of question is this? What type of question is this? Your kasha is that our brisa said idleness ein laknas, and this brisa says idleness yesh laknas. That's not a kasha. We already know the answer. V'mai karumya, v'mai rumya, harab meir, harabana. We just discussed that there's a machlokes between the Reb Meir and the Rabbanon whether or not a ketana gets knas. The Rabbanon knows that ketana gets knas. Reb Meir knows that ketana doesn't get knas. So why are you asking me a kasha? We have one brisa that says an island gets a knas. That's right, because that's going according to the Shita, the Rabbanon, that a ketana can get a knas. And the brisa that says an island doesn't get a knas, that's following the Shita of Reb Meir, who holds a ketana doesn't get a knas. So what's the kasha? Uda ka'arila, my ka'arila. So you had a tariff to my kasha, but what was the kasha? Why would you ask a kasha when you know already that we have Reb Meir and the Rabbanon arguing? So you could attribute one brisa to Reb Meir and one brisa to the Rabbanon. Zok Gemara, in fact, the Gemara that just quoted the second brisa of Acheresh, Ashoit va'aylos, Yeshlam Knas, Yeshlam Tanis Pesulim, the intent of the Gemara was not to ask a contradiction to our brisa. Because it's obvious that we could say one's going according to Reb Meir and one's going according to Rabbanon. But the reason why the brisa was quoted is because of another problem that the Gemara wanted to segue into to ask from. Because there's another problem not related to our sugya that the Gemara wanted to discuss. So that's why I brought down this brisa. Hachareshes v'ashoita v'aboigris umukaseitz. All of these women ein lahem tainis besulim. They don't have tainis besulim. Meaning, if the husband found that they were not basulas, we don't investigate. We don't take on this case. It's not a concern for us. Hasuma, the islandless. If a woman is blind or she's an islandless, yesh lahem tainis besulim. Those women, there is a tainis besulim on them. If the husband finds out that they're not basulas, we investigate. Sumcha Soimer Mishum Reb Meir. Sumcha says in the name of Reb Meir that Suma ain't la tainis besulim. If a man finds that his wife is not a basula, but she's blind, we don't investigate. And we're going to see the reasoning for this. So we have a steer over here. The steer is, here it says, the first brayse it says, Chereshes v'shoita v'ayilnis, yesh lem tanis basulim. And the second brayse says, Chereshes shoita, ein lem tanis basulim. So does a Chereshes and a shoita have a tanis basulim or not? That's the steer, and that's why the Gemara brought down this price. So the Gemara, Amar B'Sheishes Lo Kasha. It's not shver. Ha Rabbi Gamliel, Ha Rabbi Yeshua. This takes us back all the way to the beginning of the Masechta again. If you remember, we had multiple machlokes in between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua. If you believe her to say that she wasn't mizana, if you believe her to say mukaseitz, if you believe her to say that it's happened after I married you. If we believe it to say that it was an eyedness. Remember, Rabbi Gamliel said she's always believed in all the different cases that we had. And Rabbi Yeshua said, let me pia nuchayin. We can't trust her. So let's see Rashi to refresh our memories of that sugya. The Amar B'Perakama, Rabbi Gamliel told us in the first parak, he aimeres misheres tani nanasti. If she claims, yes, I am a beula, but I was raped, I was violated after I was married to you. When you stop chosadeyu, your goods were damaged. Nemenes, she's believed. And she gets her ksuba. Hachanami, so here too, ein latanis besulim, by a chereshish and a shoita, he won't be able to tie a tanis besulim, lafsid ksubasa. You know why? The Amrinon, we say, have a pakachas, litain, she's a shoita, she's a chereshish, so she can't defend herself. But if she would have been able to defend herself, she would have said, Havatana, Misher Nestani, Nanasti, Umahemna. Right? According to Rabbi Gamliel, if a woman claims, yes, I'm not a basula, but I was a basula when you made the kedushin, and after you made the kedushin, I was violated, so I'm still entitled to my full ksuba. This woman is not saying that because she's not capable of saying that, but she could say it if she were able to. So maybe the bride that holds Eilan Tainus Basulim, it's because we will tiny it for her. Since it's a taina, if she would have been a pekacha, she would have made herself, we'll represent her and make that taina for her.
Why is this a good taina? Because she doesn't have a pesha. He discovers this on his own.
Right.
It's not like she volunteered and said before the Hadiyah, by the way, I was.
You wonder why she has an amonis? Right. So the Gemara then I remember said that she could have said a better time. She could have said Mukasei Sani Tachtecha, and then she still could eat truma.
But again, why didn't she have to make that taina before the Hadiyah? He discovers this on his own.
She doesn't have to. She has an amonis. But that was the whole machlokes between Gamliel and Yeshua, whether she has an amonis. So let's say the bride that says Ein Lo Tanis Basulim holds like Rabbi Gamliel, and the bride that says Yesh Lo Tanis Basulim holds like Rabbi Yeshua. So let's say Rashi on the second white line, Ha Rabbi Yeshua, the Amr Lemi Pia Nuchayin, we can't trust her. So therefore, Hacha Yesh Lo Tanis Basulim. Here, the husband could say that she's not a basula. The Nami Havatana come on, because even if she herself would have made that claim in her defense, we wouldn't believe her anyway. So Zok Gemara, Loy Kasha, Ha Rabbi Gamliel v'Har Bishua. Frank the Gemara, Amor de Shamas Leile Rabbi Gamliel Hechadik Atana E. When does Rabbi Gamliel say she's believed to say that Mishay Rastani Nanasti? That's if she actually makes that claim. But Hechad Loy Katana here, she's a Cheresha, she's a Shoita. She's not making that claim. So Mishamas Leile, who said that you make that taina for her? Zok Gemara, we do. Even the Amar Rabbi Gamliel Mahemna, since Rabbi Gamliel holds that if she made such a taina, if she made such an argument, we would believe her to go in zoo in a case like this, where you have a person who can't make the taina on their own. Psach picha le'ilamhu. There's a concept of you help open up the mouth of someone who can't speak. You help advocate on their behalf. Now there's a whole shaila. If you say this, even to be moitzi mois. Here she's being moitzi money because she's going to get a higher ksuba because of it. Normally, you would say psach picha le'ilam to protect somebody from losing money. But here you see that we're even making this taina on her behalf to protect her. And actually, this is a very broad sugya, because what happens if a dayan is sitting by a din Torah and there's one baldin who's smooth and savvy, and the other baldin is awkward, and the other baldin is trying to get out a good taina, and he has a good taina, but he's not able to articulate it well. What is the dayan supposed to do? So it's brought down. The Rambam says the dayan is supposed to slightly assist. He's supposed to slightly assist people that come to him without it being, without looking too much like he's being in someone's favor. But if he knows that someone has tinnitus, but the person is not able to articulate them or not sophisticated enough, then Avada the dayan is supposed to slightly help because he has to bring out the truth. A boigris, there's no tinnitus basulim. Because we know a boigris of her basulim are starting to be diminished. In fact, Gemara, how could you say a boigris doesn't have tinnitus basulim? Meaning a man who married a boigris and found when he was with her the first time that she wasn't a basula, we ignore his taina. In fact, Gemara, why would you ignore his taina? We know that usually when the basulim are broken, there's dam. But there's all, and that dam basulim, first of all, to us, everything is considered tummy. We're makbar on everything. But in the olden days, it was only dam nida that answered a person to his wife, not dam basulim. But the question is, how do you know if a woman is bleeding, if it's dam basulim? Now, the first bia, you'll for sure say it's dam basulim. But if she continues to bleed, how do you know it's the wound from the basulim? Maybe it's new blood that's coming out. There's no way you can know where the blood's coming from. So how do you know? So the halach is a boigris, we let him be with her the whole first night. See, our minig is boil bil mitzvah upirish. But a boigris in those days, you were allowed to be with her the whole night. and you'll assume that all the dam she sees the first night is dam boigers. So that proves that a boigers does have dam. So why isn't there a tainus pasulim? If he's with his wife the first time and she's a boigers and there's no dam at all, would that not be a good raya that she's not a basula? So why should we take away his rights to a tainus pasulim? Zakimor, you're 100% right. There's two ways where a man would suspect that his wife is ba'ula. One is if there's no dam. If there's no dam, that's a smoking gun. And avada there, he does have a tainus pasulim. So either katoin tainus davam hachanami, but hachab ma'askinan the katoin tainus pesach pasuach. He's not saying that there's no dam. He doesn't know about the dam. He's saying that it felt very loose, meaning there's no basulim. That's not a smoking gun. That could be him not knowing exactly what it's supposed to feel like, and that's why by boigers there's no dam, there's no time of pesach pasuach. And Rashi tells us is because the opening of a katana or a nair will be much tighter than that of a boigers. By a boigers, automatically, naturally, it opens up a little bit, it loosens up a little bit, and therefore it's possible for someone to mistake that for a bu'ula. And that's why there's no tainus pasulim. So because I remember Shomar Meir, Suma Eila tainus pasulim. Frankly, my time it is sumkus. Why should you say that he can't taina that she's a bu'ula, and we ignore his complaint just because she's blind? What does that have to do with anything? Omar B'Zeir, because maybe she fell on the ground as a single girl, and that broke her basulim, and therefore there's no such thing as a tainus pasulim for a suma. Any little girl playing could fall on the floor and damage her basulim. Why are we more concerned that a suma damaged her basulim and not every girl? Because kulu rohos umaros le'imo. Any girl who fell and broke the basulim when she was bleeding, she would run to her mother and say, "Mommy, I'm bleeding," and her mother would have known that she broke her basulim. And this is going to a little bit antagonize what Victor was asking before, because Rashi says, once the mother knows that this girl is not a basula because she fell and damaged her basulim, she will declare it. I think you put it on the shidduch resume. And Rashi says, if she didn't notify the chassan in advance, that's called her fooling him. So therefore, there's a tainus basulim because he should have declared it. So Avigdor asked earlier, if she was a mukas eitz, she should have declared it, right? So that's a good question. That's a good question. But that's only maybe before the kedushin. If she's saying misharastani nanasti, right, or mukas eitz tachtecha, you see, maybe you're not mechuyev to declare it after the kedushin. Before the kedushin, when he's buying his mekach, there you have to tell him. After the kedushin, it's nestav kosadeyu. I'm yours already. So why? There's no reason to declare it. You're already stuck. No, she'll tell. No, misharastani nanasti means I was a basula when you make kedushin, so you mechuyev the full ksuba, and then afterwards.
Whereas in this case, it's happened before.
That's right. So if it happens before, you would have to declare it. Vice versa. Zok Gemara, Zu, a blind girl, she might fall down, but the problem is she might not know that she saw down because she can't see. Zu ain't a roiv, ain't a marlimo, so it's not a time. Why didn't you tell me before? There's no way anybody would have known. Someone told me there was a Lubavitcher that had a bottle of vodka, a Mickey, in his pocket, and he was driving, and he got into a terrible accident, and he was thrown from the car, and he was lying flat on his back, waiting for the ambulance to come get him. And he felt it was wet around his chest. And he said, "I hope it's blood." So she doesn't know. She might have felt wet, but she doesn't know what it is. Zok to Gemara. Duvi didn't get it. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's almost as good as the right on the feet.
That's right. Zok to Gemara weiter. Hayotzes mishum shem ra ein lo loiknas v'loy pitu. Fragt Gemara hayotzes mishum shem ra. If we're saying he's moitzi her because she was proven to be someone who was an ayefes, baskilahi. What do you mean she doesn't get knash? That's the least of her problems. She's going to get killed. If we had a girl who had a very bad reputation, when she was a girl, meaning maybe something bad happened, so there's no Adam that saw that she was novellas, but they knew she was a girl who didn't behave properly. Therefore, ein lo loy knas v'loy pita. Amar Papa. So what you're telling me is it's just for suspicion and rumor will take away her status of a basula. That's pretty radical. And if you're going to do that, then ashmamina I would take it a step further, that high shtara reya, if you have a star that has a reya, means shiyotcha alav shem ziyuf, there were unfounded rumors about this star, that it's mezuyif, loy magvinim be, you wouldn't be allowed to collect with it. Zoktamar hechidami. What are the exact details? If you're going to say that what happened is that there was a rumor about this star that it's forged, and comparable to our case, where a rumor came out that this girl was mezana, that wouldn't do it. The halacha is, even if people were talking about her that she was mezana, yet there's no edim, we ignore the issue. A woman who there's a rumor about her that she was mezana, but nothing proven, still has her cheskes kashrus, and she could marry a kohen. And the poish can bring from here halacha l'maisa. What happens if there's a meshulach going around and there's a rumor about him that he's a ganav, he's a fraud, but he still has his ishur, and there has not been any official report. Are you supposed to continue to give him money? And they say you are. I guess sometimes that can be for too. Ella. So what is the case over here where we're saying that she doesn't get knas? Ella the azuboy trey. Two Adim came along. And they said as follows: if they said that she was novellis, there's nothing to talk about. But they said as follows: Liditu tavatani bi'isura. What happened was they said the two Adim came along that we were walking down the street and she was there on a street corner and she said, "Hey, you have an extra $100? You want a date, right?" So they said she was a girl who came to us and tried to seduce us. Of course, they said, of course, with us nothing happened, but who knows what could have happened with somebody else? And that's a woman who doesn't get knas. So similarly here, by the case of the star, the Asubei Treif, two Adim came and said, Amri, and said the Malva on this star told us, Rami the two, Amalahu Zaifu Li. The Malva on this star came to us and said, come help me forge a star. I'll give you some money. So they're defaming him. They're saying that he's the person who will do it. So those are the cases where she wouldn't get knas, and it's also a star that we would not collect with. Zok to Gemara, there's a very big difference. Bishlama hasam shrichi prutim. Bishlama, in the case of a girl, we take away, she doesn't get knas if she approached men to do an avera, even though they didn't do the avera. There's plenty of prutim out there that will line up happily to do the avera. So therefore, if we know she's such a type of person, we have to be concerned that she's a bula. Elahacha im hil and huchsak, just because they proved that this malva was a crook, what makes you think that he's going to find Adam that'll play along? If a woman is looking for trouble, for sure she'll find men that'll play along. But if a malva is looking for trouble, who said you're going to find somebody who's going to be willing to be Mizayah for star on his behalf? So the Altanamonis of Adam, you should trust the star, even though you think the malva is a crook. Zoktamar Hakanami, to go into Chamahader as a Yufa, since he was looking for someone to forge a star, maybe he didn't find any Adam. Maybe he forged Adam's signature. And therefore you cannot trust this star. Beautiful. So the first Mishnah of Eil Nars was these are all the Nars, even though there's some Isurim involved, like Chayve Krisos, they do get Knas. Now we're going to discuss those women that don't get Knas. Any of these women who became either freed or fully Jewish after they were 3 years old. We have reason to believe that they were novellas after they were 3 years old. If they were novellas after they were 3 years old, they are no longer basulais. If they're no longer basulais, they're not entitled to knas. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer shvuya sheniftas hareyu b'kdushasa afal pisha gdoila. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. Until now, we always knew that a woman who's captured, we assume that she was violated. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees with that premise. A woman who was captured, we do not assume she was violated, and she still retains her status of a gedola, of a besula, and I believe the Gemara is going to say shortly that she could even marry a kohen. Haba bitoi, albas bitoi, albas benoi, albas ishtoi, albas beno, albas bita. These are all women for whom there would be Mrs. Bezdin for this union. Ein lahan knas. There's no knas. Mipnei shemischayv benafshoi, shemisasan bidei Bezdin. They're getting killed by Bezdin. So there's a kamle b'drabinei v'chol hamischayv benafshoi ein mishal mamoin shenemer b'mlo ye'asain anish ye'anish. We did this sugya very thoroughly already. That when there's a Mrs. Bezdin, everybody agrees that there is no din. There's no din mammon, and we just learned yesterday that with this Mrs. Bezdin, even if it was shoygig on this nus, and he wouldn't actually be getting killed, or there were no edim, it's still going to be potter from mammon because of chayv misha shoygig. Rabbi Yochanan said, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Doisa, Amr Dovarech. Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a woman who's captured, we don't consider her a ba'ula, holds like Rabbi Doisa. Rabbi Yehuda had Amr, Rabbi Doisa, the Tanya, Shavuya, a Shavuya, Oicheles Betruma. Give her Rabbi Doisa, a Shavuya eats Truma. So you see clearly we still consider her unviolated. Amr Rabbi Doisa, Zok Rabbi Doisa, why would you say that just because she was a Shavuya, we consider her a ba'ula? What already did the Arab who kidnapped her, what already did he do to her? Because he fooled around with her. That passes her from kuna. In other words, we will be choshid that he fondled her, but that he actually violated her, we will not be choshid, and therefore she could still eat truma. Omer Rabba, Zok Rabba, what's the raya? Rab Doisa actually makes a statement about not being choshid that she was Nevelas, and Rabbi Yehuda does as well, but they don't necessarily agree with each other. Why did Rabbi Yehuda say over here that we don't consider her to be a Nevelas? Maybe we're really not so sure. But this scoundrel who violated her, why should he get off scot-free and she's not going to be victimized a second time? When she was a Shuyah, she was victimized. Now that he violates her afterwards, you're going to let him get off scot-free? No. So we make him pay. But lav dafka because we're so sure that she's a basula. Abul Hosam, but maybe over there, Rabbi Yehuda will hold karbanis fairly. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda would not allow her to eat truma, would not allow her to marry a kohen. We just don't want to make her lose her knas. Inami, or look at it on the flip side. Atkan loy kam Rabbi Doisa Hasam. There, why did Rabbi Doisa allow her to eat truma? Ela b'truma d'Rabbanan. Maybe it was only truma d'Rabbanan. Maybe we wouldn't really consider her a basula. We wouldn't allow her to eat truma d'Raisa. But truma d'Rabbanan will let her. Aval knas d'Raisa, but knas, which is a din d'Raisa, karbanis fairly, and maybe then she wouldn't get a din knas. Omer le Abaye, the time of Rabbi Yehuda Hacha, the svar of Rabbi Yehuda over here, why we make him pick nas is shelo yehei chayten isker. It's because we shouldn't have a chayten isker, meaning just because she might have been violated for that reason, we'll let him violate her a second time without paying. So Zok Abaye, that cannot be the reason. Latanya we learned, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, shvuya shenishbis, a girl Rachman al-Islam who was captured. Hareyu biktu shasa. She is biktu shasa, and she could even marry a kain. Afilu bas eser shanim ksubasa masayim. We consider a full basula in dinim mominus that if her husband divorces her, he has to pay masayim. I understand why you would say that if this girl was violated, she should get the full knas because the perpetrator shouldn't go scot-free just because she was once captured. But if she's marrying somebody new, that she is a besula, that she could demand 200 ksuba. There's a different reason for it over there. If we say this girl who was captured doesn't get ksubas masayim anymore, she only gets ksubas mana, that's going to make her very undesirable. Because obviously the halacha considers her a ba'ula. I don't want to marry her. It's going to cause her problems. So therefore, we would rather declare her as a basula, so it'll be easier for her to find a shidduch. You see that a shidduch crisis in those days as well. Does Rabbi Yehuda actually hold that she remains biktushasa? In other words, that we assume on her that she's a basula. But Tanya we learned, someone who was kind enough and they brought slaves to the slave market, and he saw a Jewish girl that was there as a slave, and he went and redeemed her. Yisa'ena, he may marry her. Meidba, if he says testimony about her that she's a basula, lo yisa'ena, he may not marry her. Rabbi Yehuda says, Benkach lo yisa'ena. She's not allowed to marry her. So the problem is, Rabbi Yehuda by us says that we assume that she's a basula, and we're talking about if it's a kohen, of course. Rabbi Yehuda said we assume she's a basula. How could Rabbi Yehuda say over here in this brisa that lo yisa'ena, meaning we assume she's not a basula? Zok Gemara, regardless, this brisa is shver. How gufa kasha? This brisa is shver munei. Amrit, you said hapoides ashvu yisa'ena. If you redeem her, you could marry her. And then it says made b'lo yisa'ena. I don't understand. Mishum de made b'lo yisa'ena. He redeemed her, and then he said testimony on her. I know she's a basula. If he didn't say testimony on her and he bought her plain, he could marry her. If he adds to it that I also know she's a basula, that's a reason why you can't marry her. It's counterintuitive. This is what it must mean. If someone redeems a shvuya and he says, I'm sure she's a basula, and he's a kohen, he's allowed to marry her. But what about if it's made b'kdei, made b'kdi? What if he wasn't toy to her? She was already free, and then he came along and said, I know she's a basula. Then lo yisa'ena. Why? Because we're choishes, he's only saying it because he has the hearts for her and he wants to marry her. But if he was toy to her, he would never have invested money to redeem her until he checked it out very carefully. Because Rabbi Yehuda by us says that you assume she's a basula and she can marry a kohen. Yet here it says benkach lo yisa'ena. Amar Papa, you have to change it. Rabbi Yehuda holds you always assume that just because she was captured, she's a basula and she can marry a kohen. Really, it's like it says, which Rabbi Yehuda said, we know Rabbi Yehuda holds that we assume she's a basula and he is allowed to marry her, even though he's a kohen. We quoted Rabbi Yehuda in the middle of a conversation that he was having with the Rabbanon, who says that it depends, right? The Rabbanon said it depends. If he redeemed her, then we will trust him that she's a basula and we'll let the kohen marry her. But if he just said edus on her and he didn't redeem her, then we won't trust. So Zok Rabbi Yehuda, I don't see you should split it that way. Lididi, according to me, benkach ubenkach yisa'ena. I hold we don't assume she's a beula, and therefore our kohen's allowed to marry her no matter what. You, the Rabbanon, who don't trust her, who think maybe she is nevelis, well then benkach ubenkach lo yisa'ena mibayla. Then you shouldn't make differences. It's either she's mutter, either we assume she's a basula or not. I don't think you should make these differences if he's made, if he's not made, if he buys her. The Rabbanon disagree and says, no, we do make a difference. If he actually redeemed her and he put his money where his mouth is and he said, then he said, you know why? Because no one's going to spend a lot of money to redeem a woman if he can't marry her. But if he just said on her, then shema einav nosan. Maybe he wants her, so his testimony cannot be believed. But if he's paying for her, then he'll be believed. Okay, we will stop here and we will mamshik tomorrow.
What? He's not a client.